Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku, back with another fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Was Consumed by Darkness? Now before starting, please give this video a like. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. A villain of death controls 7 to kill 2. The darkness is his home, and he destroys the light around him to make the world his lair. Capture is impossible unless he wishes it to be. He feeds on sorrow and is born from pain. What is he? A deep voice with red eyes peering from the dark speaks to his victims, declaring himself a threat and their reaper. As the sun rises on another day, the students of UA prepare for graduation to become heroes. This year, the Big Three have their turn alongside a student who has skipped grades, even though he has only one semester left. He is further along than Class 1A, making him a celebrity at the school. As Bakugo gets ready for another day, he hears the news on the television. His father sits on the couch watching while his mother cooks breakfast. Breaking news announces that pro-hero Crust was found dead that morning. Police suspect he is another victim of the Drainer. Streetlights were found destroyed near the hero's body, which was discovered bleeding from his eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and other areas, similar to previous victims. His body appeared aged, as if drained of life. The police have not shared whether any evidence was found at the scene, but anyone following these cases knows that the killer leaves no clues behind. Misaki informs Bakugo that she packed him a lunch and advises him to stay away from dark alleys. Bakugo, annoyed, responds that he knows how to stay safe and that he would rather not have a lunch made by her. Misaki playfully scolds him, raising a wooden spoon to throw at him, which he accepts without argument, thanking her begrudgingly. She mentions a student at his school making history, but Bakugo dismisses it, saying he doesn't care and bids farewell to his parents. As he leaves home, he passes someone from his past, heading in the opposite direction. Bakugo avoids eye contact, feeling guilt over Izuku's frequent hospital visits since the incident. He has been avoiding Izuku, blaming himself for what happened, which is also why he was held back a year. Izuku made it into UA as a general studies student under All Might's recommendation, but Bakugo has never asked why. Instead, he has focused on his studies. Once in class, Aizawa claps to get everyone's attention. He informs them about the student who has made history by jumping grades and joining the hero course for his last semester. Unfortunately, he won't be joining them until tomorrow due to a doctor's appointment, as he is also doing a part-time internship at the hospital. Aizawa explains that since trouble often finds this class, Recovery Girl has sent him to be their personal medic until graduation. He warns them not to be reckless just because the new student has a strong quirk, making it clear that he will expel anyone for stupidity. The day continues normally until lunch when the cafeteria doors open, and a hush falls over the room. Bakugo looks up to see Izuku walking in with Aizawa, heading his way. Bakugo stands up in disbelief, realizing that Izuku is the new student. Izuku approaches, their gazes meeting for only a moment before Bakugo looks away, while Izuku smiles and acknowledges him. He mentions that it has been a while since they last spoke. Bakugo, gritting his teeth, insists they need to talk after class. Izuku suggests the roof, but Bakugo quickly changes his mind, proposing the men's room across from their class instead, wanting Shifty Hair to be there as a witness. Izuku ponders whether Bakugo blames himself for the past incident, reflecting on how Bakugo's words had given him a reason to fight again. Suddenly, Bakugo interrupts his thoughts, teasing him about his quirk, which has changed since they last met. Izuku promises to explain later, as he has to prepare for the class after lunch. With a wave to Bakugo and a bow to the class, Izuku leaves with Aizawa to the medical wing of the school. Kirishima, curious, asks Bakugo how he knows Izuku, while Mina jokingly questions if they were lovers. Bakugo dismisses the idea, clarifying that they are just old childhood friends. Ida interrupts, insisting they focus on eating since lunch is almost over, while Denki humorously responds to him. Kirishima then expresses his curiosity about Bakugo needing a witness, but Bakugo tells him to just be there and stop asking questions. As lunch passes, Class 1A heads to the training hall, where Izuku waits under a tent with Recovery Girl and Mike, Aizawa helps train the students to rely on their strength rather than just their quirks. Izuku observes while taking notes on fighting styles, quirks, drawbacks, and strategies to improve their capabilities. Everything goes smoothly until a fight breaks out between Bakugu's friends and Shoto's. Shoto tries to calm Bakugu, explaining that Sui was just joking, but Bakugu is not amused, reminding them of his past actions during the sports festival. Uraraka points out that they don't understand him because he never opens up. Ida reassures Bakugu that they will always have his back, no matter what. Izuku steps in, urging Bakugu to trust those willing to fight alongside him. He offers his support, stating that he wants to help heal Bakugu, who is struggling with his emotions. Bakugu attempts to run away, but Izuku grabs his shoulder, pulling him close and assuring him that no one will think differently of him. As Bakugu breaks down in tears, Izuku calls Kirishima over, entrusting him to help Bakugu. With a wink and a smile, Izuku returns to his station, leaving Kirishima to support his friend. Everyone returned to class after Bakugu finished his emotional outburst. Izuku pulled a tiny ring from his pocket, placing it on his index finger and flicking it with his thumb. Mike, curious, asked about the ring. Izuku explained that it was a fidget ring that helped him calm down and focus. Mike noted that it was cool but questioned if it interfered with treatment. Izuku reassured him that he wore gloves while working, so it wasn't an issue. Mike expressed his eagerness to see Izuku's quirk in action. Recovery Girl interjected, reminding Mike that wishing harm on students was inappropriate. Izuku then offered Mike and Recovery Girl night vision goggles, which Mike accepted despite his confusion. Just then, Koda rushed over, announcing that there had been an accident. Izuku quickly inquired about who was hurt. A group of about 30 squirrels arrived, accompanied by Aoyama and Kaminari. Izuku asked Koda to explain what had happened. Koda hesitated, so Izuku smiled and set up a table for them. It encouraged Koda to drop the sides and get started. As the entire class gathered to witness Izuku's quirk, even Aizawa showed interest. With night vision goggles on, the tent sides fell, plunging them into darkness. The goggles revealed white fog emanating from Izuku's mouth, enveloping Aoyama and Kaminari in a bubble. Izuku assessed Aoyama, noting 3 broken ribs and a minor concussion, but paused when he sensed something unusual. Aizawa asked what was wrong, and Izuku requested to treat them first before explaining. He then turned his attention to Kaminari, diagnosing a shorted nerve signal and a broken leg. Jiro commented on Kaminari's foolishness, and Izuku connected him to a generator with multiple cables. With a flip of a switch, Kaminari flinched but soon regained consciousness. Izuku placed goggles on him and focused the fog on his broken leg. Kaminari winced in pain but relaxed when Izuku removed his hand. With Kaminari treated, Izuku moved on to Aoyama. He waved a hand over Aoyama's head, and small blood clots emerged from a cut on his scalp. As the clots continued to come out, Izuku quickly squished one in his hand. Aizawa approached and pressed Izuku against a table, demanding to know what he had just done. Izuku explained that he hoped to discuss it later but revealed that Aoyama was working for a villain and was the traitor. He had scanned for any harmful quirks or monitoring devices and had removed and destroyed them. Mike was astonished to learn that Izuku could remove quirks. Izuku clarified that he could only remove those that caused harm, like Dabi's quirk, which used his body as a fuel source. He then presented a pin that would help Kaminari control his quirk without backtracking. Kaminari excitedly put it on and discovered he could manipulate electricity freely, expressing his joy with a tight hug for Izuku. Mike interrupted, reminding everyone that there was still more to do, and Recovery Girl offered to take care of the rest. As Izuku stepped back to give Recovery Girl space, Aizawa pulled him aside, questioning why his quirk only worked in the dark. Izuku explained that his quirk required cutting off light to function, as any light would render it useless. Aizawa was surprised by this insight, and Izuku shared that he had researched heroes extensively after awakening his quirk during an accident in middle school. He also mentioned having access to others' memories and feelings while they watched him. Aizawa pondered the implications of Izuku's quirk and its drawbacks. Izuku admitted that he sometimes muttered to himself to help organize his thoughts. Aizawa, recognizing the potential danger of Izuku's abilities, allowed him to leave, but his concern lingered. Meanwhile, Kirishima and Bakugo were sparring, and as they moved into a hidden spot, they shared a moment together that only Izuku, with his unique vision, could see. Anger bubbled within Izuku as he witnessed this. Just then, Shoto tapped Izuku on the shoulder, asking if he was all right and if he needed recovery girl. Izuku assured him he was fine but overwhelmed by the day's events. Shoto offered him a boxed lunch that his sister had made, noticing that Izuku had skipped lunch. Izuku laughed at Shoto's kindness, calling him a cinnamon roll, which puzzled Shoto until Izuku clarified that it meant he was simply kind. As Izuku enjoyed the moment, a bug on the ceiling watched him, reminiscent of the one he had destroyed earlier. As class came to an end, Bakugo emerged from the shadows, his hero suit disheveled. Kirishima followed, helping him. Izuku began to flick his ring again. Todoroki noticed and asked what was wrong. Izuku explained that he felt he had missed an opportunity to intervene. Sensing Izuku's distress, Todoroki wrapped an arm around him, suggesting that hugs might help. Izuku smiled, feeling comforted by his friend's support. After class, everyone headed to the dorms, except for 3. Bakugo entered the men's room and quickly hid Kirishima in a stall, ensuring the door was slightly cracked so Izuku could see him. Taking a deep breath, Izuku opened the door to find Bakugo waiting for him. Bakugo remarked that it was about time for Izuku to show up. Izuku, slightly nervous, asked what Bakugo wanted to discuss. Bakugo approached and pushed Izuku against the wall beside the door, his expression serious. He apologized for bullying Izuku, admitting he never intended to push him to his breaking point. Bakugo reflected on their friendship since childhood and expressed concern for Izuku, who had once been quirkless but now had developed a quirk of his own. He demanded to know how Izuku had obtained his quirk and what it truly did, insisting he could tell when Izuku was lying. Bakugo believed Izuku had feelings for him, similar to the feelings he once had for Izuku himself. He then distanced himself by sitting on the counter, maintaining a tense atmosphere. Bakugo urged Izuku to be honest, growing impatient as Izuku fidgeted with his ring, a new nervous habit. Bakugo approached him again, his footsteps heavy with determination. Izuku stammered, trying to find his words, but Bakugo interrupted, insisting they both knew Izuku didn't need to hide anything. He grabbed Izuku's arm tightly, causing him to wince in discomfort, and removed the ring, tossing it across the room. In a sudden movement, Bakugo pushed Izuku to the floor, pinning his arm behind his back. He warned Izuku to stop stalling and tell the truth before he caused him serious harm. Bakugo revealed he had seen who granted people quirks and that this individual was not a hero, referencing the time Izuku had been kidnapped by the League of Villains. Izuku managed to respond, confirming Bakugo's suspicions. Just then, Kirishima burst in, pulling Bakugo away from Izuku. He defended Izuku, stating there was no evidence that he would harm anyone and highlighted how Izuku had helped their class, even improving Denki's quirk. Bakugo reluctantly backed off as Izuku stood up, but before he could speak, a loud, ghostly echoed through the school and dorms. Izuku looked up at the flickering lights, then back at Bakugo and Kirishima. Kirishima asked what the sound was, while Izuku insisted Bakugo return the ring. Bakugo questioned why he should do that, but Izuku insisted it was crucial because something was after him. Without wasting time, Kirishima searched for the ring. Suddenly, the lights went out, and bright greenish-yellow eyes appeared between Bakugo and Izuku, accompanied by hissing, ghost-like sounds that frightened Bakugo, causing him to step back. Izuku screamed, drawing the attention of the entity. Without hesitation, Bakugo unleashed his quirk, driving the creature away just as the lights flickered back on. However, in that moment, Bakugo lost sight of Izuku. He called out for Izuku, but Kirishima found only the ring, with Izuku nowhere to be seen. All that remained were Izuku's student ID and wallet, along with scratch marks on the wall indicating a struggle and a few drops of blood left in the hallway outside the bathroom. As Bakugo examined the blood, All Might approached him, revealing he had witnessed everything and that it didn't look good for Izuku. Bakugo, filled with worry and anger, demanded to know what had happened. All Might explained that as Izuku had fled from the creature, he had been captured, and the blood was from where the shadow's claws had struck him. Izuku had called out to Bakugo, tears in his eyes. The lights flickered and burst above them, reminiscent of the scenes involving the drainer. A deep, echoing voice resonated, warning that they couldn't hide Izuku for long and that without the ring, the entity would find him. The lights returned to normal, prompting All Might to rush to Nizu's office. Nizu acknowledged the situation and emphasized the need to retrieve their student from the League while also contending with a hero killer. Kirishima suggested that returning the ring to Izuku could save him from the Phantom, but Bakugo pointed out that Izuku's cell phone had not been left behind. Nizu praised Bakugo's quick thinking and urged them to track Izuku down before harm could come to him, emphasizing the importance of righting past wrongs. Meanwhile, Izuku regained consciousness to find himself surrounded by Spinner, Compress, Toga, Dabi, and Shigaraki. He was chained to a chair, his arms restrained by a metal cage and leather straps. As he attempted to speak, Shigaraki smirked, and Izuku realized he couldn't breathe freely due to an oxygen mask covering his mouth and nose. Shigaraki warned Izuku not to attempt using his quirk, revealing they knew everything about it because he had stolen it from them and they wanted it back. Dabi placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder, causing him pain as he began to burn it. Izuku gasped in distress as Toga approached with a syringe to draw blood. Once she had collected the sample, she took it away for analysis, leaving the others free to inflict pain on Izuku while Shigaraki waited for the quirk blueprints. Back at the school, heroes and students prepared for battle, while Nizu tracked Izuku's location. As soon as they discovered where he was, everyone was dispatched to rescue him. The teachers decided to include the students in the mission for a more effective operation. Suddenly, Toga announced that the results were in, but her excitement turned to confusion. Shigaraki asked what was wrong, and Toga revealed that Izuku had multiple quirks fused as one and was not decaying like a Nomu. Shigaraki pressed for the number of quirks, but Toga needed more time to analyze the data. Just then, the power went out, causing the computer to explode and erasing all information about Izuku's quirks. Darkness enveloped the base, accompanied by ghostly emanations. Izuku's trembling began to cease as he whispered a challenge into the darkness. Sensing movement behind him, Shigaraki struck out, but his attack inadvertently hit Spinner, killing him. Dabi, feeling a similar presence, swung to his left and struck Compress. In the chaos, Izuku lifted his arms to shield himself, and the claws cut through his restraints, giving him a chance to escape. Dabi, Toga, and Shigaraki surrounded the eyes in the middle of the room. Shigaraki declared that they would pay for turning against one another, while Toga vowed that their lives would be forfeit. The villain taunted them, stating they were in his way and that they would soon perish. With that, all three rushed in to attack as Izuku made his escape. Just as he spotted heroes approaching, he fainted from blood loss on the sidewalk, only to be caught by All Might. The heroes gathered around Izuku, proclaiming it was time for the brave hero to go home. Kirishima placed a ring on Izuku, and Bakugo approached, insisting that when they returned, Izuku would have to come clean about what had happened. Once Recovery Girl had Izuku in her care, Bakugo stepped outside the nurse's office to speak. He announced that it was time everyone learned the truth about what had happened to Izuku. Rumors circulated that he had jumped off the middle school roof while trying to escape a slime villain attacking Bakugo, leaving no one to help him until the last moment. The class, along with the teachers and Nizu, gathered to listen. All Might explained that he had rescued Izuku from the slime villain. When Izuku woke up, All Might intended to leave him since he seemed all right. However, as he jumped away, Izuku had grabbed him, and that was when the villain in a bottle escaped. They had a conversation on a nearby roof, during which All Might regrettably told Izuku that without a quirk, he could never become a hero. Izuku's expression had been haunting, and as All Might approached the roof access door, he heard a noise from the fence. Turning around, he saw Izuku standing on the other side. All Might rushed to him, but when Izuku tore his notebook in half, All Might was distracted by the autograph flying away. Izuku had been so excited when he received it, only for the paper to be whisked away by the wind. All Might only came to his senses when Izuku thanked him for freeing him and proving someone right. Izuku expressed gratitude for being freed from a pointless dream and for proving that he would take All Might's place as number one, as he could no longer be used against him by villains. As All Might reached for him, Izuku took a plunge, falling 8 stories below. All Might called for an ambulance and soon learned that Bakugo had been attacked. To save them both, he prioritized rescuing Bakugo first, hoping Izuku could hold on. After saving Bakugo, All Might returned, only to find blood where Izuku had fallen. He called every hospital until he found Izuku under the care of Dr. Garaki. Nizu questioned if Garaki worked for All for One, and All Might confirmed that while Izuku might have received his quirk from him, it was unclear why he would come to their side. Aizawa suggested that Garaki could be a spy, but Nizu doubted that, noting the condition of Dabi, Toga, and Shigaraki when they were found. But Izuku had deep cuts, the others appeared drained and covered in blood. Recovery Girl added that Izuku had burns, stab wounds, and had lost a significant amount of blood. The scratches on him contained a toxin that increased pain tenfold, making it a miracle he survived. Bakugo remarked that this confirmed Izuku's story about being hunted, while Aizawa speculated that it was likely one of All for One's minions, emphasizing the need to protect Izuku. With the understanding that Izuku was not working for All for One, Aizawa insisted on ensuring his safety and keeping him under watch. Nizu agreed, placing Izuku under house arrest with his friends assigned as guards. Aizawa left to retrieve one of his scarves from class storage, announcing that Bakugo would be on the night shift with him, while Mike would teach during the day. As Aizawa prepared to restrain Izuku to his bed, the moment the scarf wrapped around one of Izuku's wrists, his quirk began to envelop him in a veil of black mist. The lights above flickered as his fingers rubbed the ring and spun the centerpiece. His body shook and thrashed violently, and with heavy breaths, he cried out in pain, contorting up from the bed. Kirishima stood outside the nurse's office, curious about what had transpired between Bakugo and Izuku. Bakugo, frustrated, insisted it was none of Kirishima's concern and questioned if he was jealous of Izuku. Before Kirishima could respond, Izuku let out a piercing scream. Bakugo burst into the room, calling out to Izuku, while Aizawa struggled with the quirk barrier around him, noting that every time he tried to cancel it, the lights shattered. Bakugo observed that the barrier seemed to restrict Izuku's thrashing, putting strain on his body. He noticed Izuku's nosebleed and held his hand, urging him to wake up. While unconscious, Izuku experienced traumatic flashbacks that caused him to react in fear. He recalled the sounds of his bones crunching, organs being punctured, blood pouring onto the cement, and his breaths growing shallow. He felt regret for not being the son his mother wanted and expressed gratitude to Bakugo for being his friend. In his mind, he saw a man in a suit approaching him, offering to be the one he could reach for in his time of need. Izuku, feeling defeated, wished to die, believing he had lost his dream. The man taunted him, suggesting that heroes would always break one's heart, and proposed revenge against All Might, claiming he was the reason for Izuku's impending demise. Izuku smacked the man's hand away, but the man grinned, revealing that he was aware of Izuku's quirk and desired to possess it. The sounds of beeping jolted Izuku awake to a horrifying sight. He was strapped to a bed, bandaged and vulnerable. His childhood doctor entered, announcing that now they could make use of his quirk. He instructed Izuku to think of what he wanted to say, assuring him that it would be read on the monitor above his head. The doctor warned him not to attempt any tricks, as his choices would be used against him, marking the beginning of his transformation into a high-end Nomu. Cuts, labored breathing, injections, and brain-altering quirks that felt like a drill piercing his skull. Even limbs were severed only to be regrown. Nothing was off-limits, not even the most invasive procedures. After 3 months of torment, all Izuku could wish for was an end to his suffering. In a moment of desperation, he pointed to 6 quirk vials, contemplating a final escape. Just as everything faded to black, he heard the doctor's voice. The doctor expressed regret, stating that they had lost him. However, there was no need to worry. The quirks would be extracted and fed to the Nomus, ensuring no one would find out. In what felt like an out-of-body experience, Midoriya broke free and pursued the doctor. After confronting him, he noticed a shadow looming nearby. Quickly, he grabbed the ring that prevented the Nomus from attacking and fled. Bakugo seized the scarf and began to pull it from Izuku. Aizawa intervened, questioning Bakugu's actions. Bakugu argued that Aizawa was acting more like a prison warden than a teacher, pointing out the consequences of restraining Izuku. Aizawa retaliated by using his scarf to throw Bakugu across the room, warning him to stand down. He emphasized that Midoriya was an unknown factor, and if the villain all for one decided to use him, they would be in serious trouble. Bakugu clenched his fists, ready to strike back and free Izuku, but Kirishima intervened, urging him to calm down and focus on protecting their friend. Bakugu grumbled that this wasn't over. As they exited, Izuku awoke and reached for the door, only for Aizawa to take advantage of the moment and bind Izuku's wrists to the bed, restricting his movement. Izuku addressed Aizawa, realizing he had discovered the truth. Aizawa reassured him that he was safe, with guards posted outside, and that he couldn't leave without supervision. Izuku muttered to himself about being a prisoner once again, sitting up with a forced smile to hide his sorrow. Aizawa settled in the corner of the room, wrapped up for a nap, instructing Izuku to wake him if he needed anything. As Izuku lay down to rest, he heard a sinister voice from the shadows, taunting him about being unable to escape. He covered his ears with a pillow, trying to block it out. Meanwhile, Bakugu punched the wall in frustration, expressing his anger at how Izuku was being treated. Kirishima reminded him that Aizawa's intentions were to keep everyone safe, but Bakugu insisted that they could protect Izuku better if he were in class instead of isolated. Kirishima confronted Bakugu about his feelings for Izuku, suggesting that he cared more than he let on. Bakugu pinned Kirishima against the wall, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, insisting that he only loved Kirishima, but acknowledged Izuku as his first friend who had always supported him. Feeling the tension, Kirishima quickly kissed Bakugu, catching him off guard. As they broke apart, Bakugu admitted that he had once loved Izuku, realizing he was drawn to his beautiful smile. Kirishima, surprised by this revelation, suggested they keep watch over Izuku. Bakugu offered to fetch them something to eat, and Kirishima agreed, grateful for the gesture. Once Bakugu was out of sight, he felt guilty for revealing his past feelings for Izuku, worrying it would complicate things. 3 months later, the day had finally arrived. After a long period of isolation, Izuku graduated from UA and was now free to work at the hospital, able to wander the halls at will. As he walked onto the stage as the valedictorian, he expressed his gratitude for the memories shared with his classmates, mentioning each of them fondly. He lifted his fist high, wishing them all the best and declaring it was his turn to go beyond. His classmates cheered, and with a bright smile, Izuku stepped off the stage. Before he could slip away, his classmates enveloped him in a group hug, except for Bakugu, who stood at the door. Bakugu called out to Izuku, handing him a list of everyone's contact numbers, explaining it was a way for him to stay in touch since he hadn't had much time with them. Mina teased Bakugu, but he brushed it off, stating that he was just as upset about what had happened to Izuku. He then held out his fist, challenging Izuku to be the #1 doctor when he became the #1 hero. Izuku nodded, bumping fists with Bakugu before setting out into the world. As Izuku walked past Aizawa outside, he gave a light tap on the teacher's shoulder, embarking on his journey to become the best doctor in the nation. By the time his classmates graduated, Izuku had achieved that title. On the first night without the students in the halls, Aizawa wandered through the school, reflecting on his pride for them. Suddenly, he heard a noise coming from the nurse's office and went to investigate. The room was pitch black, and he assumed it was one last prank from Denki. As he reached for the light switch, it failed to turn on, prompting him to grumble about the students being a handful. But then, a chilling voice broke the silence, asking how long he would keep it waiting, revealing a hunger that sent a shiver down Aizawa's spine. To look into the darkness. Aizawa knew he had to confront the unknown. He threw a flashbang grenade into the room and turned away, shielding his eyes. He heard the pop and waited a moment before opening his eyes, only to find himself engulfed in total darkness. A voice echoed, "Nice try, but I can absorb light." Bright yellowish-green eyes appeared before him, accompanied by a childlike giggle. The creature revealed its fangs, ready to strike. The next day, Niza discovered the aftermath: broken lights, a scorch mark on the floor beside an empty flashbang, and a cracked wall outside the nurse's office. Blood dripped in a pattern on the floor, and Aizawa's scarf hung from the broken window, soaked in crimson. With no sign of Aizawa, Nizu sent out a missing person report, prompting his former students to search for him. Aizawa awoke in perpetual darkness, his arms bound above his head and his legs dangling. Confused, he recalled the events leading to his current predicament. The faceless beast had torn through his scarf, its claws digging deep. He felt his strength draining rapidly, accompanied by sharp pain throughout his body. Despite his struggles, every attempt to fight back felt futile. In a desperate move, he pulled out another flashbang, but the beast slammed him through the wall, shattering the window beside him. Blood trickled from his eyes, and breathing became a struggle. In a final effort, he pulled the pin on the flashbang, causing the creature to retreat into the shadows. Using his scarf, he slid down from the broken window and landed in the building's shadow, only to hear laughter before being engulfed once more. Aizawa pondered why he had survived. Heavy bootsteps echoed around him, accompanied by a metallic sound. A chilling voice spoke, revealing that he had been chosen, and pain was necessary for the next phase. The tip of a blade gleamed in the darkness, dangerously close to his left eye. Meanwhile, at UA, fresh hero graduates searched the campus for their old teacher. Bakugo and Kirishima scoured the halls, while Shoto, Ida, Sui, Uraraka, and Tokoyami searched the dorms. Aoyama, Koda, Shoji, Denki, Siro, and Momo checked the classrooms, while Jiro, Shinso, Mina, and Minette explored the cafeteria and library. As Bakugo approached the nurse's office, he noticed the damage ahead. He rushed to investigate, while Kirishima decided to check below for clues. Kirishima spotted drops of blood and a piece of brown curly hair, short and reminiscent of a male hairstyle. He also found a gold button with a diamond-shaped flower design. As he turned to return, the wind blew the hair away, and instead of alerting Bakugo, he pocketed the button, keeping his discovery a secret. Aizawa clung to life, enduring immense pain as the monster taunted him. It forced him to make eye contact, asking if he wanted the pain to cease. Aizawa, weary and sarcastic, expressed his desire for an end. The beast grinned, offering him a dark liquid that began to seep into his mouth, eyes, ears, and nose. As Aizawa gasped for air, he summoned his last bit of strength to break free from his restraints. Crawling along the wall, he found the door, which thankfully was not locked. Fading in and out of consciousness, he managed to reach the street. The moment he stepped into the light, the suffocating sensation lifted. Just before losing consciousness, he saw Endeavor approaching. Endeavor scooped Aizawa up and flew him to a nearby hospital, vowing to find whoever had harmed him. Meanwhile, Kirishima returned to meet Bakugo, only to notice a shadow near the doorknob of All Might's office. As he leaned closer, he saw eyes staring back at him. Before he could react, the door clicked shut, and an explosion erupted, catching Kirishima in the blast. He attempted to use his quirk, but the force shattered his defenses before he could protect himself. As Izuku wiped the sweat from his brow after attending to another patient, he stepped outside to find Endeavor arguing with a nurse. The urgency of Aizawa's condition was clear. Izuku approached, demanding immediate assistance for his old teacher. The nurse insisted on following hospital protocol, but Izuku firmly stated that the policy prioritized the most critical injuries. With determination, he insisted on getting his trauma team right away. Moments later, Aizawa was rushed into surgery. As he was put under with gas and oxygen, a 20-sided die fell from his hand, rolling and landing on one. In the pitch-black surgical room, Izuku began to assess Aizawa's wounds, utilizing night vision goggles to navigate the darkness. The dark liquid from the enemy began to manifest, scattering away from Aizawa due to Izuku's quirk. Just as a bubble landed on Izuku's shoe, Aizawa flatlined for a moment. Izuku focused intently on Aizawa's heart and lungs until the blood transfusion took effect, ultimately saving his life. Once Aizawa was stable, Izuku stepped back. He instructed the nurses to keep Aizawa in the ICU for observation to ensure that no infection set in or that the new blood was rejected. The team obeyed and wheeled Shota out of surgery. Izuku sighed, relieved but exhausted, thinking that perhaps he could finally rest. However, He was quickly interrupted by a call for him to prepare for another trauma patient, a severely injured hero. With no time for rest, he braced himself and prepared for the next challenge. To his surprise, Kirishima was rolled in, shrapnel embedded in his body and burns indicating an explosive had caused his injuries. With his team occupied with Aizawa, Izuku utilized his quirk to heal Kirishima, prioritizing the most critical injuries first. This surgery proved to be his most delicate and longest yet. Outside the surgery room, Bakugo paced anxiously, his worry escalating as the hours passed. He listened intently for the sound of the light above the door clicking off. After 5 long hours, his stress reached its peak, and then he heard the sound he had been waiting for. With a squeak, the doors opened, and Izuku emerged in his protective gear, droplets of blood splattered across him. He instructed a nurse that Kirishima was ready for a room and began explaining the situation. Bakugo approached quickly, demanding to know what had happened. The nurse tried to calm him, but Bakugo insisted on hearing it directly from Izuku, accusing him of trying to run away. Izuku, however, continued down the hallway, prompting Bakugo to ignore the nurse's explanations and chase after him. As Bakugo turned a corner, he noticed a laundry bin filled with Izuku's protective gear. Nearby, he spotted a sign indicating the staff rooms and showers. Curiosity piqued, Bakugo entered the room, which was lined with bunk beds and cubbies for clothes. He noticed a shower running behind a door and approached, catching sight of Izuku's suit hanging nearby. As he peered through the cracked door, his anger and worry faded, replaced by an unexpected flush of embarrassment. Bakugo couldn't help but wonder what kind of workout Izuku did to maintain such a physique. As he stepped inside, Izuku turned around, eyes closed and hands working through the suds in his hair. Bakugo's gaze traveled over Izuku's form, captivated by the sight. Just as Izuku's hands began to drift down his torso, Bakugo slipped on a towel, catching himself but not preventing his shoes from squeaking. Izuku turned to see Bakugo frozen in place, blushing. As Bakugo approached, Izuku instinctively backed against the wall of the shower. They found themselves face to face under the water, and Bakugo, in a moment of impulsiveness, grabbed Izuku's wrist and pinned it to the wall. Izuku's surprise was palpable as Bakugo's thoughts raced, torn between frustration and an undeniable attraction. Izuku wrapped his free arm around Bakugo, pulling him closer. They shared a moment of connection, and as they both felt the tension, Bakugo's resolve wavered. Meanwhile, Kirishima began to wake up, hearing a nurse speaking to Todoroki, Kaminari, Siro, and Mina outside his room. The nurse explained that both heroes were placed in the same room for security reasons, as the quirk user who attacked them was known to Izuku. She warned that the threat would not stop until they were dead. As Kirishima opened his eyes, he saw a shadow looming over him, a creature that seemed to be watching. It moved across the room, pulling back the curtain to reveal Aizawa's critical condition, sustained by machines. Kirishima attempted to reach for the call button but found himself too weak to move. He could only watch helplessly as his old teacher was unplugged and taken away by the creature. Suddenly, alarms blared, prompting the nurse to rush in, calling for security assistance. Elsewhere, Izuku was drying off while Bakugo sat in the shower, grappling with the implications of their earlier encounter. Bakugo's thoughts spiraled as he realized the gravity of what had happened. As Izuku dressed in pajamas, the silence between them was soon broken. Bakugo warned Izuku not to tell anyone about their moment, threatening him with dire consequences if he did. Izuku, unfazed, opened the door to the hallway of beds, while Bakugo stepped into the shower to wash away the lingering feelings. Just then, the lights flickered, and Izuku's voice echoed in alarm, recognizing a familiar presence. Bakugo noticed something shiny on the shower floor and picked it up, realizing it was Izuku's ring, which had slipped off during their earlier encounter. In a panic, Bakugo rushed out, wrapping a towel around his waist, determined to find Izuku and confront the situation head-on. He was greeted by a pitch-black hallway, with flickering lights creating a strobe effect. In the dim light, Bakugo saw Aizawa holding Izuku captive. Bakugo felt a surge of anger as he realized the situation. Izuku struggled to speak, but a hand covered his mouth, silencing him. Aizawa tilted his head, grinning widely, and a chilling chuckle echoed through the darkness. Finally, I have you, Midoriya. It's time to come home, Aizawa said, his voice dripping with malice. Bakugo's determination flared. He charged forward, ready to attack, but was halted when Izuku was used as a shield. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the radio in Izuku's room, announcing a missing patient from life support and requesting backup, warning everyone to be cautious of Shota Aizawa. Bakugo paused in shock, looking down at the scene. He called out, demanding to know if Aizawa was the villain who attacked Yue. Aizawa's laughter filled the air, and Bakugo launched an attack, striking at the dark aura surrounding them. Did you attack both Aizawa and Kirishima? Bakugo shouted, fury boiling within him. They were in the way of my true targets, Aizawa replied, his tone mocking. Bakugo's rage intensified, and he unleashed a powerful blast, determined to free Izuku. As the smoke cleared, Izuku remained unharmed, still trapped. Aizawa's laughter rang out, playful and taunting. Say goodbye, Midoriya. Izuku's muffled cries echoed as they faded away. Just before disappearing completely, he managed to warn Bakugo, urging him to look for the real weakness. The moment Izuku vanished, Bakugo punched the wall in frustration. "It," he exclaimed, glancing at the ring in his hand. He quickly dressed, determined to find a clue that could lead to defeating the monster. As he left, he spotted Kirishima sitting up in bed, discussing what he had witnessed. Kirishima noticed Bakugo's troubled expression, filled with sorrow and regret. Bakugo headed to Izuku's office on the top floor of the hospital to investigate. In the elevator, he encountered Shoto Todoroki. "Hey, Bakugo," Shoto greeted. Bakugo snapped back, irritated. "Not in the mood for your nonsense right now." Ida, who was behind Todoroki, noticed the ring peeking out from Bakugo's hand. "Are you about to propose to Kirishima?" "Congrats, Bakugo," Ida exclaimed. "This isn't mine. Deku was captured by that thing," Bakugo replied, frustration evident in his voice. "Why would it kidnap Midoriya and Aizawa?" Shoto asked. "That's why I'm heading to his office," Bakugo stated. "I know you aren't a team player, Bakugo. Let us be your extra eyes on this, please," Ida urged. "Do as you wish." "I won't stop you," Bakugo replied, recognizing their potential usefulness. Once they arrived on the floor, Bakugo forced open Izuku's office door, surprised to find it filled with All Might merchandise. As the three searched for clues, Ida discovered a pattern in the files. "I may have found something," he announced. On the paperwork of every hero Izuku had treated, there were 2 work numbers listed. One was different, but the other was the same for only hero patients, set as a code with a letter and a number separated by a dash. Bakugo noticed the code and grabbed a piece of paper to decipher it. He wrote the alphabet at the top and began to analyze the letters and numbers. Ida asked, "What are you doing?" "Each letter has a number before the dash. I'm using the number to find out what letter he's trying to relay. Luckily, the letters and numbers repeat, so this will be easy. I just need a few minutes to decode this," Bakugo explained. Shoto kept watch at the door while Ida assisted Bakugo. After 10 minutes, they solved the code. "Beneath the silver veil stands the shadow before you. You need only to pierce through the veil to see what has been lost. My name, you ask? I would take heroes to fuel my hunger. Negativity keeps me here, waiting for you in the dark. Give me what has been lost," Bakugo read aloud. "Dim it, Deku. Why riddles? Just give us the answer, nerd," he muttered in frustration. Shoto pointed out, "I think he did. Look at some of the letters, they're capitalized." Ida noted, "Okay, so, silver is all capital letters, but why?" Bakugo pulled out the ring, and realization struck them all at once. "Weakness," they exclaimed in unison. "Now we just have to figure out what a wraith is," Bakugo said, determination in his voice. Just then, Denki arrived, pushing Kirishima in a wheelchair. "I knew something was on your mind, so I asked Denki to help me escape for a moment to talk," Kirishima said, looking at Bakugo. Bakugo smiled softly, grateful for the support. "Thanks, babe." Denki chimed in. "Since I've played D&D with the guys before, I have some experience with wraiths." Bakugo shot back, "Why the hell are you talking about that game?" Kirishima added, Some of the staff were talking, and we overheard that Mr. Aizawa was found gripping a 20-sided die. Plus, wraiths in D&D have silver as a weakness. Why else would Midoriya hint at it? Fine, explain what it is, Bakugo demanded. Denki pulled out his phone and began reading from the monster manual, explaining that wraiths were ghostly phantoms of those who had died or were close to death. They could create phantoms from people who had recently died in terrible ways, controlling them as they wished. Sunlight weakened them, but in darkness or dimly lit rooms, they could extinguish nearby lights. As Denki explained, Kirishima searched for clues, pushing himself along until he spotted one of Izuku's vests. He noticed the buttons matched one he had found at the school. Why was his button at the scene? Kirishima wondered. Was Midoriya the wraith, or was he being controlled by it? He needed to investigate further. Hey guys, I'll be right back. Recovery girl has a treatment for me to get better, he said. Want some assistance getting back? Denki offered. Nah, I'll call a nurse if needed. You just figure out how to get Midoriya back, Kirishima replied before heading down to see Recovery Girl. Once treated, he was quickly released from the hospital. Instead of informing his friends upstairs, Kirishima walked out and called Tamaki. Hey, Red Riot. How's your recovery going? I heard you were attacked at school, Tamaki asked. I'm alright, but I need your help, Kirishima replied. Kirishima received a text asking if he could meet at a specific address. He agreed and soon found himself waiting outside for about an hour. Growing impatient, he called Izuku. On the other end, Izuku's voice was strained, filled with urgency. He mentioned that All for One had escaped from Tartarus prison and that villains were trying to follow him. Suddenly, the call ended with the sounds of chaos and battle. Kirishima heard footsteps approaching and quickly hid in the bushes, peeking out to see All for One arriving at Izuku's house with a key in hand. Confusion filled Kirishima's mind as he wondered what All for One was doing at Midoriya's home. After a moment, Kirishima noticed the door was unlocked and let himself in. As he explored the main floor, he stumbled upon a memorial for Izuku's mother, who had passed away shortly after he started high school. He also spotted a door beside the stairs that led to the basement. Curiosity piqued, he decided to investigate further. In the basement, All for One stood over Izuku, who was gasping for air as dark mist surrounded him, attempting to invade his being. All for One taunted Izuku, belittling him for failing his mission and getting distracted. Izuku struggled, desperately trying to fight against the fog. Kirishima felt a surge of anger as he watched his friend in distress, realizing he needed to help but was aware that without backup, confronting All for One could be fatal. Just then, Izuku found the strength to rise, determination in his eyes. All for One mocked him, snapping his fingers to summon figures from the League of Villains who had previously been thought dead. Despite the overwhelming odds, Izuku smirked, revealing his mastery over the quirks of those around him. Aizawa intervened, canceling one of All for One's abilities, allowing Dabi, Toga, and Shigaraki to attack. Dabi's flames forced All for One against the wall, while Toga and Shigaraki pressed their advantage. All for One realized that Izuku was a distraction, and as he attempted to teleport away, he was met with Izuku's fierce resolve. Izuku declared that it was time for All for One to be dealt with once and for all. In a shocking display of power, Izuku confronted All for One, causing him to bleed from multiple wounds. Kirishima watched in disbelief as All for One began to age rapidly, transforming into a frail husk. However, as Kirishima attempted to retreat, he stumbled, making a loud noise that caught Izuku's attention. Izuku turned to see Kirishima and ordered him to be captured. Kirishima dashed for the door, but the dark mist pulled him back with tremendous force, slamming the door shut behind him. Pinned against the wall by the fog, Kirishima found himself face to face with Izuku, whose eyes glowed ominously. All for One demanded to know how Kirishima had found them. Kirishima gritted his teeth, refusing to answer. The fog responded by growing spikes that pierced Kirishima's arms, eliciting a scream of pain from him. As he cried out, a white mist escaped his mouth, which Izuku inhaled, causing blood to trickle from his own lips. All for One revealed that he was not working in tandem with Izuku, explaining that Izuku had tried to expel him, but the damage had been more severe than anticipated. He recounted how Izuku had sent out calls for help over the years, but no one had come to his aid, leaving him to fester in his resentment. Izuku, weak but defiant, insisted that he had friends who cared for him even in his darkest moments. All for one countered with accusations about Izuku's past actions, suggesting that his feelings for Bakugo had fueled his pain. Kirishima was taken aback by the implications, demanding answers from Izuku. With a heavy heart, Izuku admitted the truth, causing Kirishima to feel a mix of rage and sorrow. The dark entity feeding off Kirishima's negative emotions grew stronger, while Izuku's injuries began to heal. Meanwhile, Ida was searching through files in Izuku's office and stumbled upon something alarming. He called Bakugo and Shoto over to share his findings regarding Izuku's health records, which revealed inconsistencies in his blood type and DNA since All for One's capture. The tension in the air thickened as they realized the implications of what they had uncovered. Only Izuku's appearance remained unchanged. Izuku contemplated his situation, realizing that if he didn't act soon, it would be too late to intervene. As he thought, the fog crept up and snatched Kirishima's phone from his pocket. The creature taunted, revealing that Kirishima's attempt to call for help had failed. It offered to resend the message, but with a grim twist. Izuku pleaded for Kirishima's safety, willing to do anything to prevent further harm. The monster, with a sinister grin, claimed that the chaos was a result of Izuku's weakness. Before Izuku could assist Kirishima, the creature silenced him with a makeshift jiji, leaving him thrashing helplessly. It then conjured 2 spinning shadow spikes aimed directly at Kirishima. Meanwhile, Bakugo sifted through paperwork until the phones of him, Shoto, and Ida buzzed with messages from Kirishima's number. Ida expressed concern, while Bakugo confirmed it was indeed Kirishima. They gathered to read the alarming messages. Izuku needed medical attention, and they were in grave danger. Bakugo concluded that they were being manipulated into separating. Ida insisted they couldn't afford to split up, given the threat they faced. Bakugo agreed, determined to stick together as they rushed out. As they approached Izuku's house, Izuku trembled, sensing Kirishima's lack of emotion. Blood dripped ominously from above, and Izuku's heart shattered at the sight. The monster reveled in Izuku's despair, hinting at a sinister plan as it cloaked the house in darkness. Bakugo was the first to reach the door, and the trio split up to search the house more efficiently. Todoroki scoured the main floor, Ida headed upstairs, and Bakugo descended into the basement. The monster slipped past Ida, who was startled by Aizawa's voice, only to be interrupted by the encroaching shadows. Todoroki sensed danger as the creature glided behind him, but before he could react, blue flames erupted in his blind spot, accompanied by 2 pairs of glowing red eyes. Bakugo, on high alert, heard the unsettling sound of dripping water echoing in the darkness. He shouted into the void, demanding to know where his friends were. As he approached a dim light, the horrifying scene unfolded before him. Kirishima was bound to a chair, and Izuku was suspended above him, shadow spikes piercing through his limbs. Bakugo froze at the sight, while Kirishima, with tear-filled eyes, struggled to speak through the G. Bakugo rushed to his side, calling out to him. Once the GG was removed, Kirishima collapsed into Bakugo's arms, prompting Bakugo to express his frustration and concern. Kirishima, with a smirk, revealed his transformation into Izuku, leaving Bakugo pinned beneath him. As Bakugo flinched, he noticed Izuku's eyes glowing red, and his hair standing on end. Izuku's voice was laced with a chilling calmness as he acknowledged Bakugo's confusion. He explained that he had no intention of letting anyone else die, but he needed to claim his prizes without interference. Time was of the essence, and he couldn't afford to waste it. Before Bakugo could respond, shadows enveloped him, and he lost consciousness. When he awoke, he found himself in a hospital morgue, where Izuku sat with a bound and gagged Todoroki as a footstool, Ida as an armrest, and Bakugo beside him. They all struggled against their restraints, realizing their quirks were inactive. Izuku greeted them with a sinister cheerfulness, announcing that it was time for his grand reveal. Bakugo scanned the room, spotting Dabi and the others, their eyes glowing red. The camera turned on, broadcasting their predicament to the world. At UA, All Might was alerted by Nizu to watch the unfolding situation. Izuku began his announcement, revealing himself as the hero killer everyone had been pursuing and claiming that All for One was dead. He lifted AFO's head for the camera, clarifying that he was not Evan. He proposed a chilling deal, 2 lives in exchange for 2 young heroes, one of whom was already present, while the other was a target he had in mind. As the feed cut off, All Might and Endeavor stood side by side, filled with rage and helplessness. All Might urged Endeavor to remain calm, but the fear of losing another son was palpable. Back in the morgue, Bakugo fought against his restraints, determined to confront Izuku. He attempted to strike, but the shadows tripped him, lifting him off the ground and throwing him against nearby autopsy tables. Ida managed to shake off his bindings and questioned Izuku's motives, pleading for the real Izuku to return. Bakugo broke free and charged at Izuku, demanding that he fight back. Gain control again. The shadows ensnared Bakugo, pinning his hands to the wall. He was warned about putting up a fight, and now they would pay for his actions. Bakugo noticed Izuku's hands reaching for Ida and shouted for them to spare his friends. He offered to surrender if they let them go. Ida urged him to wait for help, but Bakugo insisted there was no one coming for them. They were on their own, recalling how the pros only acted when it suited them. All Might appeared at the door, having come alone, and stated he was there as part of their deal. He requested that Izuku let them go. In response, Izuku threw Ida and Shoto out of the room before locking the door, just as Shoto's GG fell off. Ida freed them both so they could seek backup, but they were soon blocked by Dabi, Toga, Aizawa, and Shigaraki. As the 2 heroes prepared to fight, Dabi was knocked out cold by a metal fist, while Shigaraki was slammed against the wall by tentacles. Toga was absorbed into fat gum, leaving Aizawa to face off against the others. Bakugo was released from the shadow's grip as Izuku began to laugh and cry hysterically, unable to believe it was this easy. All Might called out to him, but Izuku's emotions switched off as he pulled something from his pocket, causing both Bakugo and All Might to brace for an attack. He offered them a fair chance with a roll of dice, stating that All Might would roll with disadvantage while Bakugo had the advantage. Bakugo questioned why he had the advantage, and Izuku's eyes shifted colors as he explained that he could only use others' abilities for a limited time. All Might rolled the dice, getting a natural 20 and a 9. Izuku flickered and ended up behind All Might, lamenting how close he had come. Just before All Might was stabbed, Bakugo knocked Izuku away, realizing he had rolled an 18 and a 1. He declared that Izuku would not take another life and unleashed a powerful blast, sending Izuku crashing through the wall. Bakugo gave chase but stopped short when he saw Kirishima's body. Anger surged within him as he vowed that Izuku would pay for this. A dark aura filled the room as Shigaraki transformed into Izuku and broke free, fleeing with Dabi in pursuit. Aizawa attempted to follow but was halted by another scarf. Shinso confronted him, stating he wouldn't let him go. At that moment, Eri approached, her horn glowing as she laid her hands on him. Bakugo, Tetsu, and Tamaki pursued Izuku. Toga struggled to break free, but even her weapons couldn't penetrate Fat Gum's defenses. All Might urged Shoto and Ida to help him catch up, promising to assist with the remnants of his power. Ida carried All Might on his back while Shoto propelled himself forward with fire. Izuku dashed outside into the sunlight, prompting Dabi to hand over his coat to shield him. Dabi stayed behind to confront Shoto and Tamaki while the others continued the chase. As Izuku glanced back, he noticed a window cleaner nearby and shot a shadow to sever the support wire. Ida saw this and handed All Might to Tetsu before rushing to rescue the person in danger. Izuku then entered an old shipyard and slipped into an abandoned warehouse to hide. Bakugo was the first to enter, cursing the darkness that surrounded him. Tetsu flipped a light switch, illuminating the space. He remarked that abandoned buildings were supposed to be empty. Bakugo sensed something was off as shadows emerged and shattered the lights, a loud hiss echoing as it approached them. All Might powered up his fist to fend it off. Bakugo realized they needed to retreat, but a map of the building appeared in his mind, revealing a blood splatter in the middle room. Smirking, he darted in that direction, thanking Tetsu for the hint. As Bakugo charged in, The monster attempted to stop him, leaving only a few scratches on his body. He taunted the creature, demanding to know what it was hiding. Reaching the door, he charged up a blast to break it down, only to be caught off guard when the monster surrendered. Bakugo hesitated, confused by the sudden change. Tetsu questioned the timing of the surrender, while All Might approached the doorknob, warned by the monster about explosives rigged to the door. Bakugo was incredulous, questioning why the monster suddenly cared about lives. The monster proposed a deal. It would surrender if they agreed not to enter or look inside the room. Bakugo refused, charging his fist to attack, but a pulse hit everyone, canceling their quirks and leaving Bakugo feeling weak. Tetsu wondered what had happened, and the monster explained it was a self-protection system designed to keep them out for 30 minutes, allowing time for the police to arrive. All Might took advantage of the moment to cuff the monster, expressing that he believed there was still good within him. The monster scoffed, revealing its hatred for All Might and Bakugo for past events. As the police escorted it away, its rage-filled eyes betrayed a deeper sorrow. Before leaving, it questioned how they had navigated the dark building. Tetsu pointed out that the monster had provided them with a mental map. Izuku's eyes darkened as he looked down, then quickly back at the door, muttering to himself too softly for anyone to hear. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists before being carried away in the van. He had been driven away. Bakugo fell to his knees, bowing his head to hide the tears streaming down his face. He felt the weight of his failure, thinking about how he had been too slow to save Kirishima. Memories flooded his mind, recalling their last night together. Kirishima had asked if they would get married after graduation, to which Bakugo had responded with a teasing remark, but deep down he had felt the warmth of that moment. As Bakugo's thoughts drifted to a hospital shower with Izuku, he remembered the words that had been whispered in his ear, urging him to make a choice. Frustrated, he punched the door, dust swirling away to reveal the silver beneath. 3 days later, Bakugo sat beside Kirishima's hospital bed. Aizawa's bed was nearby, where Mike, Shinso, and Eri sat. Bakugo's voice was filled with anguish as he questioned why they were allowing this to happen. Shinso attempted to explain that families and loved ones needed closure, but Bakugo's anger erupted. He believed it was a waste of power if it wouldn't bring them back to life. Mike reminded him that she had tried, but there was no cure for death. In a fit of rage, Bakugo stormed out just as the mortician entered to take Kirishima away. Shinso wanted to follow, but Eri stopped him, understanding that Bakugo needed time alone. She expressed that tears do not fall when others are watching, and Mike comforted them both, acknowledging their shared grief. As Denki, Shiro, and Mina entered the hospital, Bakugo walked out, radiating a fierce determination. Denki hesitated, sensing the intensity in Bakugo's eyes, while Mina warned him not to approach. Shiro remarked that he wouldn't want to be in the way of Bakugo's mission. Bakugo's gaze was filled with anger as he made his way to Tartarus prison. After clearing all safety checkpoints, he met with All Might to question Midoriya. The cell was brightly lit, leaving no shadows, and Midoriya was suspended by chains, a muzzle mask tightly fitted over his face. He glared at the one-sided mirror, only able to see his own reflection while others watched him. All Might informed Midoriya that he had visitors, and the muzzle beeped, allowing him to speak. Midoriya's tone was laced with sarcasm as he acknowledged their presence. All Might had papers in hand, but he set them aside, demanding to know what had happened to Midoriya, refusing to accept the previous story. Midoriya began to recount the events of that day, reflecting on how Bakugo had urged him to jump off a roof, believing it would lead to a new beginning. He expressed his feelings of hopelessness, recalling the moment he had hit the ground, broken and bleeding, and how he had seen Bakugo running away instead of staying to comfort him. All Might attempted to explain that he had to save Bakugo from danger, but Midoriya countered that heroes should provide reassurance and support in times of need. He felt abandoned and had been taken captive during his moment of vulnerability. Tears streamed down Midoriya's face as he described the horrors he had endured at the hands of a doctor who had strapped him down and performed surgeries while he was awake. He had been subjected to cruel experiments, all in the name of creating the perfect quirk. Bakugo's anger flared as he demanded an explanation for the changes in Midoriya's DNA and blood type. Midoriya's response hinted at deeper truths, suggesting that the locked room and the changes were all part of a larger scheme. The tension in the room was palpable as Bakugo realized the implications of Midoriya's words. Just then, the questioning room fell silent, and Midoriya's ominous promise echoed in Bakugo's mind. Bakugo, looking as if he had seen a ghost, rushed out, with All Might following closely behind. He needed to see the truth for himself, but All Might warned him that they couldn't access the locked room. Bakugo recalled how Midoriya had glared at the door during his arrest, realizing that the Midoriya they had just spoken to was not the real one, but a facade created by the combination of quirks he had chosen. As the muzzle was about to lock back into place, the power suddenly cut out, freeing Midoriya from his mechanical restraints. The black fog dissipated, revealing Shigaraki's form as he escaped through the vents. A police officer monitoring the power panels expressed concern about the consequences of letting him go. All Might quickly called for backup to confront the threat and rescue the real Midoriya, while Bakugo prepared to fly them to the location for a stakeout. He demanded assurance that their backup would be strong enough to face the challenges ahead. If anything, they can hold his attention long enough for Tamaki to finish the job. Bakugo smirked, popping his knuckles to show how ready he was for a fight. After a few minutes, Tetsu and Tamaki arrived, prepared for battle. They all hid behind a metal storage system, quietly watching the door in hopes that their target would show. Tetsu expressed doubt about whether their opponent would appear, suggesting he might have figured out their plan. Tamaki, feeling nervous, reassured him that there was one part their enemy wouldn't expect. As the sun began to set, they heard rustling coming down the hall. With a gulp, Tamaki readied himself to act. The fog stopped at the door and darted into the box they were hiding behind. Sweat began to drip as they wondered what it was up to. Soon, the box opened, and their opponent appeared, looking like Midoriya again. Bakugo questioned whose body was inside. As he moved to open the door, Tamaki stepped out, trembling. He stammered that he had something the enemy wanted, hoping to negotiate for his friend's return. Tamaki revealed a tentacle wrapped around Bakugo and All Might, who appeared unconscious and tied up. Bakugo was incredulous, asking if Tamaki had really betrayed them. Tamaki blushed and set the two heroes down by the door, confirming that he had indeed made a deal, but it would have to wait until the enemy was dealt with. As the enemy entered the code to unlock the door, Tetsu lunged forward, attempting to stab him with his silver-coated hand. The enemy smirked, finding their ambush predictable. Izuku frowned in disappointment before kicking Bakugo into Tetsu. All Might quickly freed himself from the ropes and headed for the open door. As shadows approached, Tamaki wrapped tentacles around the enemy. The enemy roared in defiance, claiming that normally it wouldn't be stopped, but it had consumed silver before the fight. It taunted them, suggesting they wouldn't be able to fight back when faced with another enemy. The shadow left its body, revealing one of the missing heroes. It declared that the tanks around them contained heroes on life support, and once it ended their lives, it could use them as it wished. Bakugo broke free and flew to each tank, destroying them. The enemy warned that Bakugo had better make use of the only hero left. Furious, the shadow fog advanced toward the room, but All Might pushed it back with a powerful punch. The enemy turned its attention back to the heroes, heading straight for Tetsu. With its body shielded in metal, it attempted to pelt Tetsu until he broke. Tetsu lunged to stab it again, realizing too late that his hand was coated in silver. The enemy declared that one of them had to go and camouflaged into the darkness, breaking all the lights around them. They quickly donned night vision goggles. As Tetsu scanned his surroundings, Bakugo noticed the monster lurking behind him and shouted a warning. But it was too late. Tetsu felt a sharp pain in his chest and looked down to see an arm piercing through him. He fell to the floor, and All Might rushed over to check on him, giving the enemy the opportunity it had been waiting for to enter the room. Bakugo growled, ready to give chase. Tetsu urged Bakugo to take something he needed, swinging his fist to send the silver blade over. Bakugo caught it and dashed inside just before the door shut and locked. The lights in the room flickered on, and Bakugo removed his goggles to survey the area. He realized he was alone against the enemy, who had only one body left to fight with. The enemy laughed, hinting at a secret Bakugo would soon discover. Bakugo scanned the room, ready to attack, until he heard a heart monitor beeping behind a curtain. He pulled it back, initially seeing only a computer with a long text screen. As he read, he quickly realized this was how Izuku communicated. The text began with old messages from when Izuku was first kidnapped, detailing his pleas for help and descriptions of the pain he felt, followed by a long silence marked only by dates. A video clip caught Bakugo's attention, and he clicked it. In the video, a doctor entered, asking if they had finally found the quirk mix their master needed to grow stronger. A robotic voice listed various quirks, and the doctor expressed concern that the combination might be too much for the subject. The master, however, insisted the payoff would be worth it. Bakugo watched in horror as multiple needles were loaded into a device, injecting the subject all at once. The body contorted in pain before flatlining. Two Nomu worked together to revive him, but a shadow emerged and struck the doctor down in a brutal manner, draining his life away. Bakugo continued reading the text below, which revealed Izuku's desperate thoughts. He had tried to escape but found himself trapped in a cycle of torment. The most recent update detailed Izuku's fears that when he died, the quirk would go on a rampage, killing indiscriminately. He had hoped to push Bakugo's rage to the point of killing him, believing that Bakugo could save everyone. Bakugo's eyes began to water as he wiped away tears, turning to open another curtain. The smell of decay hit him like a wall, and he was met with the sight of Izuku's condition. His body was covered in sores, muscles withered to the bone, cheeks sunken, hair matted, and tubes connected to him as his bones were misaligned from improper healing. A Nomu approached Bakugo from behind, but it merely continued walking, carrying 2 4-bags to connect to Izuku, emptying the previous ones. Bakugo fell to his knees, tears streaming down his cheeks as he whispered Izuku's name, overwhelmed by despair. "Why do you want me to end your suffering?" Bakugo thought back to their childhood, their time at UA, and even moments they shared in the shower. He felt the weight of loss pressing down on him. He had already lost someone he loved, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing Izuku too. The robotic voice responded, "I trust no one but you because I love you, Kaken. Become the #1 hero and carry our dream on. Okay?" Tears streamed down Izuku's face as he forced a small smile. Just as Bakugo reached out to wipe away the tears, the lights flickered and went out. One Nomu powered a generator to keep Izuku alive, while the other moved toward the breaker box. Bakugo braced himself for a fight. Only a red light dimly illuminated the room. Fog began to swirl in, moving past Bakugo and closing in on Izuku. The Nomu shot spikes toward the fog, but Bakugo rushed in, intercepting the attack with his silver-coated knee pads, knocking the creature away. He declared that he wouldn't let it kill Izuku. The Nomu taunted him, suggesting that Bakugo wanted to take care of it himself. Bakugo insisted that he wanted to save Izuku, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. The creature laughed, revealing that it drew power from Bakugo's emotions, thanks to his overwhelming feelings. In a swift motion, the Nomu appeared behind Bakugo, pinning him against the wall by his throat, lifting him off the ground. It reveled in the moment, stating that Bakugo would witness Izuku's last breath. Bakugo struggled to break free, but the fog ensnared his leg, twisting it painfully. He held back a cry of pain as it broke his other ankle, but he glared defiantly at the creature, refusing to show weakness. The Nomu dropped Bakugo to the floor, commanding him to stay put while it prepared to fulfill Izuku's final wish. With determination, Bakugo lifted his arm to blast the creature away, but it retaliated, breaking his wrists with a swift motion. The Nomu then turned its attention back to Izuku, preparing its strongest attack, believing that once Izuku was gone, it would have no weaknesses. The Nomu returned from the breaker box, charging at the fog, but it couldn't land a blow. The fog, however, struck with precision, impaling the Nomu repeatedly. The creature persisted until the fog grew bored and dismissed it with a wave of its hand, severing its head. The headless Nomu managed to wrap its arms around the fog, showing its loyalty. The sound of an explosive within the Nomu caused the fog to burst a hole in the ceiling, sending the creature flying. The explosion lit up the night sky for a brief moment, shaking the building. The fog turned to Bakugo, who was leaning over Izuku, wielding the silver blade that Tetsu had given him. Bakugo expressed his remorse for all the times he had bullied Izuku and for not being there when he needed support. He apologized for not saving him sooner, declaring his love for Izuku. Just then, the Nomu charged at them in a fit of rage, but Bakugo leaned over Izuku, determined to protect him. The beeping of machines faded into the background for Bakugo, replaced by the sound of his tears falling onto Izuku's chest. He released the silver blade embedded in his own chest and stood up, adrenaline coursing through him, masking the pain. Shadows obscured his eyes as he faced the creature. The Nomu laughed, feeding off Bakugo's emotions, declaring itself complete. But Bakugo countered, asserting that Izuku would never want to harm anyone. He realized that the creature was born from regrets, not revenge. With rage fueling him, Bakugo's body began to smoke as his quirk awakened, and he prepared for the final confrontation. Tamaki noticed the smoke and alerted Tetsu and All Might, who rushed to help. Bakugo locked eyes with the beast, and as silence fell, the structure around him began to disintegrate in a brilliant light. He declared that the creature would never see Izuku again, for it would not be where he was going. The Nomu lunged at Bakugo, attempting to drain his life force, but Bakugo stood firm, envisioning a powerful explosion. As blood began to flow from him, it evaporated in the heat of the impending blast. With determination, he proclaimed that they would face their fate together. The explosion rocked the area, sending Tamaki reeling, but he quickly regained his balance. The building was left in ruins, with only a mushroom-shaped cloud of smoke remaining. Fortunately, only Bakugo was affected by the radiation. As Tamaki landed, All Might rushed in, searching for Bakugo. He was met with a heart-wrenching sight. A Nomu held a frail Izuku beside Bakugo, placing Izuku's hand on him to heal his injuries. The burns were reduced to first degree, and the radiation dissipated. All Might questioned the Nomu, realizing that both it and Izuku were transparent. He understood then that Izuku was passing on. Izuku declared it was time to make things right, and they split into beams of light, heading toward the hospital, reaching Aizawa, Kirishima, and other heroes and villains affected by the blast. 3 weeks later, Bakugo opened his eyes to the bright lights of the hospital. As he blinked, he was greeted by Kirishima's smiling face. Kirishima welcomed him back, but Bakugo's heart raced as he asked about Izuku. Kirishima fell silent, his smile fading, and he delivered the heartbreaking news that Midoriya hadn't made it. Heroes searched for his body, but nothing survived the explosion except for the computer storage located beneath the building. This computer held both Izuku's and the beast's memories. Bakugo's head hung low as Kirishima handed him a zip drive. He mentioned that it contained Izuku's final thoughts, understanding how much Izuku meant to Bakugo. Kirishima reassured him that he would always be by his side. As Kirishima prepared to stand, Bakugo pulled him into a hug. He expressed his regret for hurting Kirishima, admitting that it was not manly of him. Despite his feelings of unworthiness, he was grateful for Kirishima's kindness. Tears fell from Bakugo's eyes onto Kirishima's shirt, prompting Kirishima to hold him tighter. In his thoughts, Kirishima recalled how Izuku had once been the light that pulled him from darkness. Izuku had entrusted Kirishima with Bakugo's care, emphasizing that Bakugo needed someone to watch over him. He encouraged Kirishima to direct any anger toward him instead of Bakugo, playfully noting that Bakugo was an emotional idiot. Kirishima questioned Izuku's words, but Izuku clarified that Bakugo had harbored feelings for him. With Izuku no longer in the picture, he believed that true love could flourish between Kirishima and Bakugo. He wished them both a long and happy life together. As Izuku faded away, Kirishima saw his genuine smile before waking up in his own body. In the present day, Kirishima resolved to do his best to help Bakugo move forward. The message on the zip drive decoded to reveal that time heals all wounds. Although it may not feel like it now, one day the pain would subside. Love was a powerful emotion that should not be wasted on the past. Instead, it should be carried into the future and embraced. The past would always remain, but the future was a gift that should be cherished. Izuku's message concluded with his name, Izuku Deku Midoriya. The end.